The human digestive tract protects itself from its own acid with a mucosal barrier of mucus and bicarbonate. When that barrier breaks down, you get peptic ulcer disease. External chemical catalysts often trigger this breakdown. This vintage aspirin bottle represents one of the most common culprits: non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, or NSAIDs. Lifestyle factors compound the risk. Smoking actively impairs the mucosal defense mechanisms, leaving the tissue vulnerable to its own chemical environment. Because they share these same underlying causes, patients usually assume all peptic ulcers are a single identical disease that you fix with simple antacids. This diagram shows how the condition actually splits based on anatomy. Peptic ulcer disease branches into two distinct structural locations: gastric ulcers in the stomach and duodenal ulcers in the upper intestine. While the craters look structurally similar, one location is highly prevalent and usually benign, while the other can act as a smokescreen for carcinoma. Recognizing the microscopic differences is the only way clinicians know whether to prescribe a simple medication or urgently biopsy for cancer. To understand the difference, we have to drop down to the microscopic level. Once the defenses fall, hydrogen ions and pepsin penetrate the tissue, causing uniform destruction, regardless of ulcer location. This diagram shows the 4 zones of that destruction. We start at the top layer, Zone 1, which is entirely made up of necrotic debris, dead cells, and fibrinoid material. Moving down to Zone 2, we find an area of acute inflammation, packed with neutrophils actively responding to the tissue injury. Right below that, Zone 3 reveals the body attempting to heal itself. This is granulation tissue, filled with proliferating capillaries and fibroblasts. Finally, we hit the foundational bottom layer, Zone 4. This is made entirely of thick, dense, collagenous scar tissue. This deep 4-layer fibrotic destruction creates a permanent structural defect in the organ wall. It is physical damage that simple acid blockers cannot instantly erase. Let's apply that micropathology to the duodenum first. Duodenal ulcers are usually small, sharply defined craters located just past the stomach's pylorus. They are primarily driven by chronic H. pylori infection in the stomach, which essentially forces a massive increase in gastric acid delivery straight down into the intestine. This vector graphic shows how the local cells adapt to that acid dump. Through a process called gastric metaplasia, the duodenal tissue literally morphs into stomach-like tissue just to survive the acidic environment. In a cruel twist of biology, H. pylori bacteria then travel down from the stomach and colonize this newly formed stomach-like tissue, eventually causing the mucosa to break down completely. Despite this intense cycle of inflammation and tissue mutation, malignant transformation of a duodenal ulcer is exceedingly rare. A duodenal ulcer, for all its complex metaplasia and bacterial colonization, remains a painful problem of excess acid and bacteria. It does not pose a serious cancer threat. Gastric ulcers present a very different profile. They are usually larger craters that commonly form along the lesser curvature of the stomach or around the antrum. This comparison table shows the difference in the surrounding tissue environment. Instead of undergoing metaplasia to handle excess acid like the duodenum, the gastric mucosa suffers from widespread chronic gastritis and glandular atrophy. The deep Zone 4 fibrosis we looked at earlier creates a mechanical threat here. In a large gastric ulcer, GAT scar tissue can cause severe physical contraction and permanent deformity of the stomach wall. But the ultimate pathological threat lies in the cellular environment itself. That specific pattern of chronic gastric inflammation and atrophy carries a high risk of progressing to dysplasia and eventually carcinoma. Because gastric ulcers arise from a failing atrophic mucosal defense system rather than a simple excess of acid, they serve as a potential breeding ground for cancer. Returning to the macro level, these pathological facts have immediate physical consequences for the patient in the hospital bed. Both ulcer types can cause severe physical emergencies. As this simulation illustrates, deep tissue erosion can breach a major blood vessel, triggering massive hemorrhage. If the necrotic crater eats entirely through the stomach or duodenal wall, it leads to perforation. The contents of the digestive tract spill directly into the peritoneum or penetrate adjacent organs. Alternatively, the healing process itself can be destructive. The dense scar tissue forming in zone 4 can physically block the gastric outlet or the proximal duodenum, completely preventing food from passing. So while the question of benign versus malignant dictates long-term management, both ulcer types can be rapidly fatal through these purely mechanical failures. For the physician planning a treatment, the anatomical location provides a clear operational directive. An ulcer found in the first part of the duodenum allows them to confidently proceed with acid suppression and antibiotics. This clinical scorecard shows exactly how the protocol shifts for a gastric ulcer. If the ulcer is found on the lesser curvature of the stomach, the physician must assume cancer risk, making a physical biopsy absolutely mandatory. This drastic difference in clinical effort is driven entirely by the surrounding mucosal pathology. Metaplasia means treating acid. Atrophy means hunting for cancer. Understanding peptic ulcer pathology means recognizing that the microscopic destruction looks identical in both locations, but the geography dictates whether you walk away with a simple prescription or initiate a full cancer workup. Upper abdominal pain is ambiguous. An ache in the epigastrium indicates internal damage, but external symptoms rarely pinpoint the exact location of the erosion. When the source of that pain is a peptic ulcer, clinicians categorize the condition as either acute or chronic. Acute ulcers appear suddenly and are of short duration. They occur across all ages and sexes and are frequently identified only when they cause significant internal bleeding or hematemesis. Chronic cases require a more specific investigation. The focus shifts to two primary locations: the stomach, resulting in a gastric ulcer, or the upper intestine, known as the duodenum. Differentiating between these two in a clinical setting is necessary because imaging is not always immediate. A physical examination must provide the initial direction for treatment. Misinterpreting the signals can lead to complications. The wrong dietary advice or a failure to anticipate the timing of a flare-up can result in unnecessary pain and delayed recovery. Pinpointing the source requires comparing 14 distinct variables, ranging from patient demographics and stomach anatomy to the precise mechanical relationship between food and pain. The evaluation begins with the patient's overall profile, as systemic differences often precede the localized symptoms. Gastric ulcers are most common in middle-aged patients. Duodenal ulcers typically strike earlier, often appearing in young adults between the ages of 25 and 40. Physical appearance also differs. A gastric ulcer patient is often thin and anemic. Conversely, those with duodenal ulcers usually appear healthy and well-nourished. These builds correlate with internal stomach orientation. The thinner gastric profile is associated with a J-shaped drooping stomach. The healthier duodenal profile is linked to a steer horn stomach, which sits much higher in the abdomen. Timing also matters on a seasonal scale. Duodenal ulcers are known for their periodicity, frequently flaring up during the spring and autumn. Gastric ulcers follow a less predictable schedule, with attacks lasting several weeks, followed by months of relief. Factoring in age, build, and seasonality establishes a baseline probability before the patient even describes the specifics of their discomfort. Once the profile is established, the focus shifts to the pain itself, specifically its exact anatomical location. Gastric pain is localized in the mid-epigastrium, or slightly to the left. For a duodenal ulcer, the pain is felt at the duodenal point, about 1 inch to the right of the midline on the transpyloric plane. While the site is important, the most significant differentiator is the pain's immediate reaction to eating. In gastric cases, food acts as an irritant. Pain starts almost immediately or within 90 minutes of a meal as the food makes contact with the ulcerated stomach wall. For a duodenal ulcer, the graph looks entirely different. Eating provides relief because food neutralizes the acid, dropping pain levels immediately. But this relief is short-lived. 2 to 3 hours after eating, the stomach pushes acidic chyme into the duodenum. The undiluted acid irritates the ulcer, creating a sharp return of discomfort known as hunger pain. This delay explains why duodenal patients often wake in the dead of night. As the stomach sits empty, unbuffered acid triggers a spike in pain. Patients often respond by eating biscuits or drinking milk in the middle of the night to dilute the acid, which typically provides enough relief to allow them to return to sleep. This pattern is absent in gastric cases. Because an empty stomach does not irritate a gastric ulcer, these patients generally do not experience night waking or hunger pain. The precise timing of pain relative to meals and the circadian rhythm is the most reliable clinical indicator for isolating the duodenum as the source. The body's mechanical reaction to the ulcer also creates distinct behavioral patterns, beginning with how a patient manages their discomfort. Vomiting is a notable symptom in more than half of gastric ulcer cases. It provides relief by emptying the stomach, so patients often induce it themselves. In contrast, duodenal patients rarely vomit unless a complication like pyloric stenosis occurs. These reactions change how a patient views food. Gastric patients maintain their appetite but become afraid to eat because of the immediate pain. Duodenal patients eat frequently as a primary strategy for pain suppression. This leads to a predictable shift in body weight. Gastric patients typically lose weight due to food avoidance, while duodenal patients often gain weight from their frequent eating habits. Diet also fluctuates. Gastric patients strictly avoid fried and spicy foods to prevent immediate flare-ups. Duodenal patients generally have no specific dietary aversions, as food does not cause immediate irritation. If the ulcer erodes a blood vessel, internal hemorrhage can occur. This severe complication is statistically more common in duodenal ulcers than in gastric ones. Anatomical location dictates how blood exits. Gastric bleeding usually presents as hematemesis, or vomiting blood. Duodenal bleeding frequently presents as melena, or dark bloody stool. Weight fluctuations and bleeding patterns serve as evidence of the patient's long-term pain management and the ulcer's physical position. The gastric profile is characterized by immediate pain after meals, a fear of eating, weight loss, and frequent vomiting. The duodenal profile presents the opposite: delayed hunger pain, relief through eating, night waking, and gradual weight gain. For clinicians and medical students, the most effective screening tool is the mechanical relationship between food and pain. Determining if food acts as an aggravator or a reliever is the fastest way to categorize the condition. Patients can assist in this process by logging the exact interval between eating and the onset of pain. This data is the most valuable information you can provide during a gastroenterology consultation. Accurate diagnosis depends on the physiological mechanics of how food and time dictate the pain's onset. Understanding these relationships allows for more targeted treatment and faster recovery.
If you found this video informative, please like and share, comment what you would like to see next, and subscribe to the channel to get notified about future informative videos.